Thursday, the April the 22nd on radio.com. We'll join up with WFAN at 6 o'clock this evening. Draft tomorrow. We'll have a draft preview show, 6 to 7 on fan. And then they'll have a first round coverage. And then Friday night, we'll have a 6 to 7 draft preview show. And they'll have coverage of the draft again. So they'll have coverage on WFAN both nights. We'll have shows from 6 to 7 on the fan. We'll be on radio.com, obviously, with some draft stuff also, but that'll be 5 to 6. Then we'll do a special draft show, 6 to 7 preview shows on the draft the next 2 nights on WFAN coming up at 6 o'clock. You know, with each passing day as you watch everybody try to illustrate a plan and start to see if they can enact a plan in different parts of the country, you start to see what's going on with things that may or may not be part of your life, you know, that are typically part of your life at a certain part of the year. Like when golf courses will get back to normal, and they're far from normal right now. They did reopen again here in New York. But you can't play with guests. You can't use carts. There's no one who can touch your clubs. The clubhouse isn't open, but you can go out and play. You can go out and walk the course with your wife, or you can carry your own clubs, or you can go out with guests if you keep distance and wear a mask. With members, you can't go out with anybody who's not a member of the club. But right now the weather's not that great, so you need to let it get a little warmer. Then I think the course will get pretty crowded. As a matter of fact, it'll be a welcome diversion to have that open every day. But as you look to each of these sports, and football aside, because they have the draft this week, they're not going to get really pushed for a while on their calendar. I saw the Saints made some comments about their offseason plan already, but be that as it may, they're not going to get pushed with their calendar very quickly. So they can wait a little while before they have to even consider anything. They will have a chance to look at all the different things that are going on. They'll see what happens where places try to open. And everyone wanted to use Georgia as a test case, but a lot of Georgia hasn't opened yet. Parts of it have, parts of it haven't. So, again, you're going to have to wait till we see a more uniform opening. And then you're going to have to wait 2 to 3 weeks to see what the reaction is as far as whether the virus comes back, does it get worse, et cetera, et cetera. But as you move a little farther along in the calendar and you start to think, like we're dealing with camps, or camp's going to be open this summer for the kids. Camps keep contacting us. We're waiting. And we obviously don't know the answer. Saratoga. Now, Saratoga's been part of my summer for 40 years. I've only missed 1 year in Saratoga in the last 40 years. I've been there every other year, usually for a pretty good amount of time. There's sales there you want to go to. Obviously, the meet starts now in July and really gets going in August. The month of August is really the nuts and bolts, the heart of the Saratoga meet. But we have already learned today that Saratoga will not have yearling sales. Now, Saratoga not having yearling sales is like Saratoga not having a heartbeat. People come from everywhere. I'm not just talking about come from parts of this country. They come from Japan. They come from the Middle East. They come from Ireland. They come from wherever they race horses in the world to the Saratoga meet, and to the Saratoga races, and to the Saratoga sales. And the main sale, the big sale, which is there's a New York bred sale on the weekend, which has gained in popularity, and as the New York bred horses have gotten better and better, it's become a more important sale. But the sale that is before that during the week, where the big horses come in. Now, there's also an enormous sale in Kentucky, There's a couple of them, but there's a very big one in September that lasts 10 days, and they sell a tremendous amount of horses. And that's the biggest sale of the year because of the volume of it and the early quality of it. But this sale up in Saratoga is, I mean, you can get Triple Crown winner there. You can get that quality of horse there. These are top flight prospects. It's like drafting first rounders up there. And people set their calendar to be in Saratoga for sales week. Trainers do it, owners do it, coming from California, Kentucky, Florida, Virginia, all hotspots of thoroughbred racing. So as of now, we know that those sales will not take place in Saratoga this year, which to me is the first real indication to me that there may not be a Saratoga meet. Not having the sales there is an enormous blow. Will change a lot of people's Saratoga meet. I can't see them. I don't know that this, they're going to come a point where there are certain races in the year that need to be run. Certain races at Belmont need to be run. Not just the Triple Crown races, but other races need to be run. Certain races at Saratoga need to be run. They are part and parcel of the history of the sport. Will that happen this year? I just don't know. I remember Saratoga's a little tricky in that you plan very much in advance. You rent the same house every year. That person who rents to you goes on vacation. You build relationships that day. I've rented from the same person for years. You plan to be there X number of dates. You plan to be with the track, what days you'll be there, so that you have your seating arranged and everything else, your boxes and everything else arranged. So there's a lot that goes into it. And right now, all that is, by now, it would be completely locked up, done. Really, it's done by, most years it's done by February. And we don't have anything done now. And we just learned today about the babies or the yearlings not being sold there this year. And so I would say that's, for the first time, puts the Saratoga meet seriously in doubt. The NHL has now removed the idea of playing games at neutral sites. That's gone. They have their players in the quarantine until the end of April, but they are admitting now that if they're going to start, it probably won't be till July if they start at all. And I have not really spent much time talking to leagues about this stuff. And then the last couple of days, I went out of my way to do it just to see what was going on. The first thing that becomes readily apparent is they have no information. These people who you would think would have better information than I or than a normal person, people would, because they have to plan leagues. They don't have a lot of information. They are left with the same level of uncertainty that we're all left with. And let's be honest, there's a heightened level of uncertainty. None of us know what's going to happen here. None of us know even what the plan is. We can talk about testing, but I see a guy this morning, okay? I told you I watch Squawk Box, which I love, and I love CNBC. I watch CNBC. I go on the midday show, the halftime report. I've been on other shows there. The people there have always been wonderful to me. I watch the shows. I love Squawk Box. I love the people in the morning. They do a great job with Squawk Box. I watch it. I might bounce around and watch some different things, but I always watch that. This morning they had a guy on from LabCorp, okay? And he's talking about LabCorp's prices jumping up. He's talking about we now have tests, 2 different tests we have coming. Are they ready? Not yet, but they're coming. But they're ready? No, but they're coming. We got a test to see if you've had it, a test to see that you had antibodies, a test to shows whether you have it now. We have home testing. So right there in the interview, I get my computer out and I go to LabCorp while the interview's going on. There it is right in front of you. Testing available, $119. Okay, at home testing. Okay, by mail. Blah 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 blah. You go to the site. First thing it says is, this is in very limited supply. And then underneath it says, not available in New York, New Jersey, Rhode Island, Maryland, etc., etc., etc. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. This guy hasn't mentioned one part of that in the interview. He has not told you as the price of it shooting up. Okay, and this was before the market opened. I don't know where it went today. I didn't look at it to see where it closed, whether it closed up or down or what. I didn't look. I didn't buy. I don't chase those kind of stocks that are good for a week or not. I'm not big on that. I mean, I might go after a biotech that I believe could do something big, but that's more long range. But he didn't mention that they're in very short supply. He didn't mention that they didn't have them yet. And he didn't mention that all these states, you cannot send them to any of the, you cannot get this if you're in these states, New York, New Jersey, Maryland, Connecticut, Rhode Island. A lot. I don't remember each state top of my head, but I do remember there was New York, New Jersey, Rhode Island, Maryland. I think there was Connecticut, and there was 2 or 3 more. Most of them were Northeast states. You're watching this and you're saying, this is what's wrong with this. You got a guy on here now. He's giving people some hope. Hey, wow, this is great, blah, blah, blah. And then not available in these states, not available here, not available there. So bottom line is you can't get one. A doctor tells me about something yesterday. Okay. I go to the site, no chance of getting it. I won't go say what the product is, doesn't matter. No chance of getting it. 0. When they're going to have it, have no idea. When will they be back ordered? Have no idea. Not even taking orders right now. That is what you're running into with every passing day. So to me, we have no ratcheted up manufacturing. We are late to the dance with this to begin with, but let's not even bother going back into that again. It's not worth it. The point is, here's a guy this morning, LabCorp. Okay, here it is. Let's go. And then you find out you can't get it. No way. And you're not allowed to get it in the state anyway. So that's out the window. We still have no idea about anything. There's such a level of uncertainty. And I found after talking to some people in different leagues today, they're in the same boat. They have no level of certainty. And they even said to me, hey, our players have stressed. I got this from 2 different leagues today. Our players have stressed that if they cannot be kept healthy, meaning we get any outbreak of this game, set, match, we're done. We are done. So they want to make sure. And before any of these leagues want to come back, they keep demanding the same things. We want to make sure there's a modicum of travel open that you can use that's safe. No one knows if that's the case. Hey, the airlines have never stopped flying. They're flying at 5% of capacity, but they've never stopped flying. You can always get an airplane. I mean, I don't know where you're going, but you could always get an airplane. The point is, there are parts of our life that have never closed. We are just not moving, and that's going to be a big part of this. They are going to welcome back or end the, stay in your house restrictions. It doesn't sound like they're going to end the social distancing anytime soon, but they're going to end the stay in your house thing at a given point, and then it's going to be up to you. But a very good part of the people are not going to move because they don't feel comfortable, they don't feel safe. They're not going to move. They're going to do the same thing they're doing now. They might go to the supermarket where they know somebody. They'll go to the pharmacy where they know somebody, right? They'll run into the dry cleaner that they know on the hours that the dry cleaner is going to be open. They'll run in there and get their clothes or drop clothes off and pick them up the next week. They'll do that. They may go curbside to a restaurant. We've done that a bunch of times. Make an order. A couple of the restaurants we go to have stayed in business. You saw how well Chipotle did. I mean, because of the fact that they were doing a great business digitally and a great takeout business. I know some restaurants that are very high end restaurants and have very good food, and they've done it. I mean, on Saturday. We were order number 58 from that restaurant, where you go drive up to the restaurant. You've already paid with your credit card. You give the kid your number. He runs in, he gets your food, he puts it in your trunk, you give him a tip, and you leave. And there's your dinner. And it's kept the people employed. It's kept people at the restaurant employed. It's kept the restaurant in business. And it's allowed us to, have something different to eat. Not that that's big a factor. It's not. You'd rather the more important part is keeping the restaurant and keeping people employed. That's fine. But as far as getting back to looking ahead to summer, more and more as we head towards May, and we are now a couple of days from May. Today is the 22nd of June. We're a week away from May. Within a month, we're in June. School's basically done. We know that. Private schools are completely done. Schools are done. We don't know if schools will be open next fall. We don't know if there'll be summer camp for the kids this summer. My boys both go to summer camp, but will they go to camp this summer? I don't know. The camp doesn't know. Well, I plan to go to, we have a bunch of horses. We've put them back into training. Are they going to Saratoga? We don't know. Are we going to Saratoga? We don't know. I don't think we're going to be knowing if we're going to Saratoga until August or late July. And I'm starting to think that there's a very real possibility that these professional leagues may not get restarted this year. And I never thought that was possible. I thought they would play. I did think there would be, even if it was just the playoffs in the NBA, even if it was just, now I'm not even thinking about with fans. I don't think fans is even a possibility. I don't think fans in arenas is going to be a possibility until we have a drug that works. Until we have a therapeutic that is not only able to keep you alive, but a therapeutic that if you get symptoms that you worry about, because one of the things that we seem to be reading about this virus is it's doing a very severe amount of damage to your lungs and maybe even a lasting damage to your lungs. So you get to the point and you spiral with this. All of a sudden you're ill, you have a virus or flu-like conditions, and then all of a sudden you start to struggle with your breathing. You've never done that before. You start to struggle with your breathing, and now you're spiraling out of control. Well, maybe if we can get a therapeutic that you can give someone as soon as they start to be in distress with their breathing, which means their oxygen debt is an issue. As soon as you realize that is the case, where I can't get my breath well, they give you this drug. Now, right now, the hydroxy drug has taken a hit and it's been minimized. The studies weren't that good. People are attacking it, but you know what? Part of that's political, as we know. But people, it's not getting any great reaction. The remdesivir is getting a far better reaction. It has had a couple of studies where it's done very well. One on very ill people in Chicago, another one on moderately ill people, and it took away a lot of the symptoms. It is a drug that made by Gilead, which was made for the Ebola virus, which I guess has properties. Listen, I'm not a scientist, so I don't want to get into the properties of the viruses and stuff because I have no idea what that's about. Um, the bottom line being that it is given to you either 5 days or 10 days based on where you are in the illness. It is given to you intravenously. Now, there's a lot of stuff here. If it is classified an orphan drug, a drug, where this probably won't be. See, what has to happen is if these studies, which should be ramped up, and listen, I don't know anything about the timetables of these things, but I'm praying and hoping that the government is putting an absolute 100-mile an hour, push this thing going to make sure this is being done around the clock. And I would hope that's the case. I don't know if it is, but I hope and pray it is. My understanding is, because I looked up, is it expensive? Because I know that a couple of these outfits, and one that I can tell you I sold once. I'm not going to say what company it was, but I bought a drug company that did well until I found out that they charged $125,000 for an application of the drug. And I was like, that's not fair to anybody. I understand it might save a life. I understand. And the drug was for hepatitis. I think hepatitis C. And it's a one-time drug. You only took it one time in your life, and it cured it, which is a remarkable medicine. But the best you can do is $125,000 for the drug. Well, I guess a big key is whether this is considered an orphan drug or not. If it's considered an orphan drug, which means it's not used to a wide part of the population, it can charge a lot of money. Well, this needs to be one that is not an orphan drug. And that's where the government comes in. And the government's got to say, mass produce, if the tests come back quickly, and hopefully they are pushing this, mass produce this serum or liquid or whatever it is that has to be given to you intravenously, mass produce it. And I think there's a cutoff. I think it's like 200,000 applications, which takes it from being an orphan drug, and then it can't charge because it's for more the greater good, then it cannot be charged for a lot of people. There's a difference of whether something's an orphan drug or not an orphan drug, and how much it can be charged. Now, remember, if somebody gets a vaccine, they get the first shot of that vaccine, and they're going to charge a lot of money and make a lot of money on the first couple of years of it before it becomes a generic drug. You know that's going to happen. And you understand that going in. That's for a vaccine. Even though they mass produce it, the company's going to make a lot of money. This one, you would hope that since it's been around a while and it'll need more than that many applications worldwide, that they won't be making a killing on the drug. And they'll get it to everybody who needs it. That's what you hope and pray. You know, how these drug things get it done and everything, we'll have to wait and see. But so far, the remdesivir has gotten pretty good reviews. So it's got your fingers crossed. And also, I read a story in the Wall Street Journal the other night, and they were talking about all the different, basically the race that labs and biotechs and big pharma are having to come up with the vaccine, and that there are a couple, and they highlighted Pfizer. I know somebody else highlighted today Johnson & Johnson on television, but someone else in this story highlighted Pfizer as a company that may be out in front. Now remember, they still have to do a lot of clinical testing and blind testing and all these different things. So these drugs have not been, unlike the remdesivir, which has already been used on humans without a lot of side effects over the years, these drugs have not been used. So they take much longer, probably at least a year. But the fact that you are moving along and getting some hope already that these drugs are working on the virus, well, that is a step in the right direction. And it's very clear to me that our answer is in a miracle medically. That we don't have an answer. Our answer is big pharma or a biotech coming up with an answer with a new drug that works. That's our answer. Otherwise, we don't have a real good answer for anything. And we might not have the stuff back that we love, games, professional sports competition, even plays and concerts and the like back like we really know them to be until we have pharmaceuticals that work. And right now we don't have them. So we could be looking at a while. And I have to admit, for the first time, I'm starting to question whether or not these leagues will play this year. I always lean on the side of, oh, they'll play. They'll play. Don't worry, they'll play. And now I'm coming around to where I'm not sure that's the case. Because I don't think they have a whole lot of answers right now. And the players seem very, very cautious, almost apprehensive. And if they don't feel comfortable about their safety, they're not going to play. And I don't blame them. That's their livelihood. That's their That's how they're built. That they have a small earning power to begin with. I don't question them for that. I can tell you right now, I guarantee you won't go back to a game until there's a drug that works. And I can tell you right now, I'm not going back to a game until a drug works. Back after this. Remember, draft tomorrow. We'll have a special draft show on The Fan from 6 to 7 tomorrow night and Friday night before the draft coverage. Scott Pioli will be with me both nights. We'll have some other reporters bouncing in too both nights. I'll have Bree with me tonight at 6 to give us what he's hearing on the day before the draft. MLB suspends the Red Sox replay operator. They take away a second-round pick, and Cora gets suspended for his conduct with the Astros. He did not get he did not get implicated. They did say they didn't think his leadership was top drawer with the Red Sox. He might have been lacking in his leadership there, but they didn't hit him for anything that went on with the Red Sox. They did hit the stadium operator. They took away a second-round pick from the team, and Cora got suspended for his role with the Astros, his leadership role with the Astros. So that's where we are. So the Red Sox didn't get anything more than that for this year. Nothing crazy. Cora, we know what's going on with him, so that was there anyway. And they took away a second-round pick. So that's what we know. We also know, I mean, a lot of people made a very big deal about Gronkowski going with Brady. You know, this whole thing is good for the league because it gives the league another draw. It gives the league another TV attraction. Number two, Tom's on the downside of his career, which we know, so his impact with the Bucs remains to be seen. He does have a lot of weapons there. He had weapons there before Gronk got there, and now Gronk goes. I guess they had met and discussed it in the past that the Pats got anything for Gronk is a good thing for them because he wasn't going to go back and play there. We don't know what he has left. When a guy leaves like he did and comes back, they usually don't come back with a whole lot of force. You worry about him conditioning. You worry about him staying in shape. You worry about how committed he is. I mean, so I wouldn't worry about it that much. If I were an opponent, I wouldn't be that scared about it. But from a standpoint of a attraction, it's a positive thing for the league. That's how I look at it. Would it shake me up if I was in their division? No. Wouldn't bother me. Do I understand why fans would be... Well, yeah, you're taking away two guys who were big-time players for the Pats, top of the line players, winning players, and now they're going somewhere else. So I understand that. But if they had both stayed in New England this year, I don't think it would have automatically meant that they were going to win there next year. That's what I believe. I don't think it would have automatically meant it because they're getting old. It's hard for them to stay on the field. It was hard for Tom, as you know. The Pats made sure they let everyone know how hard it was for Tom to practice every day last year and how hard it was late in the season for him to practice at all. That's usually the case. A lot of times you have to make concessions. When the Giants had the great Mark Bavaro, Parcells always had a rule: you didn't practice, you didn't play. He allowed Bavaro to go through the entire 90 season and not practice, and just to get him for the games because that's how bad his feet were. That's how bad his big toe was. So that's what if you want a guy to play. There comes a point where you make a concession to him because he can't practice and play. He can't do both. He gets to a point where he says, I can give it to you on Sundays. You know what my heart is. You know what kind of performer I am. I can give it to you on Sunday. I'll be mentally prepared. I will know the game plan. I will be mentally prepared. I will be mentally motivated. I cannot give it to you during the week and still have anything left on Sunday. That's where you get to a certain point. And clearly, if you listen to the past, Tom got to that point second half of last year where they just said he wasn't that available to do a lot of things in practice. And it's not surprising when a guy like Gronkowski gets there either because of where he is, either worn out mentally or worn out physically or both. So I know it creates a very good storyline. Hey, how incensed they are in New England. They shouldn't be incensed. Sooner or later, these smart organizations move on. As Chuck Noll would always tell you, if you listened, and he didn't speak very much, so you'd have to listen really intently. He said sentimentality was his biggest problem. It's very hard to get rid of players who win for you. But in football, if you are sentimental, if you keep the player 2 years too long and hope you're going to get something out of him and don't believe your eyes. Your eyes tell you one thing, your instincts tell you one thing, and you keep the guy anyway because of the fact that he's been so important for you. You have an allegiance to him. You have a loyalty to him because of what he's done for you, what he's done for your career, the championships that you've won together, the days you've had together, those halcyon days of championships and the like. Well, it's very hard. And many coaches, and I've heard this from many top coaches, we have to lack sentimentality if we're going to continue to win. We have to be able to tell the player that it was great for us that what he's done. We have to be able to tell that player that he's done, that we're done with him, that time has passed him by despite all the things he accomplished. So, if you're the Pats, you got to understand, you got to move on. Not easy to do. Never easy to do. But if you think, you're making reservations for the Bucs to go to Super Bowl next year, well, I think you're overreacting. So does Vegas, who's put their over-under number at 9. And even that is just a little bit of an homage to Tom Brady, because you don't want to insult him and put his number even a little lower than that. Now, they do have some talent. Listen, they have very good wide receivers. They have good offensive players. They have very good wide receivers. They have a couple of really top individual talents. And the Gronkowski, who can be with Howard, who's been, they loved Howard and they didn't love him. They loved him and they didn't love him. He's got a lot of talent. There's no question. So Is it stunning news that a guy comes out? I mean, listen, these guys come out of retirement. Didn't I see today Harvin's coming out after 3 years gone? I mean, how many times is Harvin going to come out of retirement? And these guys come out of retirement all the time. But one of the things you notice in football is that when they come out of retirement, they rarely do anything. Rarely do anything. Your peak performance, your window of opportunity in the NFL is so small. Your peak earning years, your years of physical prowess are so limited that you got to take advantage of them. You have to be in the right place at the right time with the right players when that happens. I see this story on the screen right now, which says New York to coordinate with New Jersey and Connecticut on contact tracing program that will be philanthropically paid for. I don't know I haven't looked into who's doing that. 35,000 medical students in New York to help, because this thing you understand how this works, right? You test positive for the disease, for the virus. They then ask you where you've been, who you've come in contact with, the dates, the times, and then those people go to all of those people. Now think about that, how quickly you're going to run out of people doing that. In a state like New York, the state of New York, which has an insane amount of people in it. Even take a state like New Jersey, which I think has 9 million people in it, which is small compared to New York. The odds on doing that, I mean, I don't care how many students you have. Even if they were doing a good job, what are you trying to prove with each thing of that? And you don't even know yet if you can get it again. You don't even know a lot of times whether that test was right or not. And you can have it and not manifest symptoms. You can also not have it where it didn't come up on the test and you really do have it, or it's too early for it to come out. I mean, there's so many different ifs, ands, or buts about this that the idea that stuff is going without it being such a wholesale, enormous amount of testing, and testing sometimes the same people more than once, I just don't see how this plan works. Early on, if you could have taken a test where you went back to work and you went home, if you had it, if not, you went back to work, and you had done really enormous amounts of that 2 months ago, you could have maybe at least kept this under control. Other than that, I don't see how testing at this late stage is going to work, because people are in so many different stages of contact with the virus. I just don't see anything now. 35,000 medical students. And then you have to worry about how diligent they are. You're dealing with college kids. I understand that medical students are, but still, I mean, this is asking a lot. Asking an incredible amount, and then putting your trust in that chain doesn't break down along the way in terms of its reliability, in terms of its doing the right job and taking it seriously. There's a lot there. Right now, as you sit here, it is very hard to foresee a real, legitimate sports season until you have a therapeutic that works on this virus, where you know it's there, it's established, it's available. Until that has happened, I don't see how anybody has a sport. I don't see how anybody goes back to anything where you're crowding people. And that includes going on Long Island to New York City at rush hour on the Long Island Railroad, or hopping on a New York City subway, or then going to events, baseball games, playoff games, concerts, even outdoor concerts, movie theaters, restaurants, Broadway. It's hard to see how we have a normal life until we have some drugs that we can count on. It really is. Back after this. Some draft stuff. Tomorrow we will have the 6 to 7, we will have draft preview shows on the fan before the coverage. Draft the fan will have draft coverage starting at 7 o'clock tomorrow night, 7 o'clock Thursday night, Friday night, and then obviously coverage all weekend. I mean, finally to have an event, even though this will be a very different NFL event, even though it will be done in a limited fashion from a technological standpoint, where it will limit some of the access and some of the things that have been part of the draft in the past. It will be done. You will have the players available in real time. You will have the commissioner from his basement. You will have the teams with far fewer people in the war rooms than in the past. And what it will probably mean is that, for realistic terms, what it will probably mean is that there'll be far less conversation before the team makes its pick, that the team pretty much will have done its due diligence. It will have gone through its own version of the drafts. It will then say, here's where we are. There would be time maybe for one or two passes to a team in terms of a trade if you'd already laid the groundwork. But for the most part, that stuff will be done in advance. Players who have issues that usually you would be getting information on up to the minute, those players you will have locked in on either positively or negatively beforehand. There probably won't be as much searching and speculation on those players. And, you have not had the ability, the league has always been very, very good at monitoring the behavior of its prospects, knowing where they've been and what they've been doing the last 20 or 40 days, being able to keep a very, very, tight watch on these players. That's not the case this year. It's a very different year. So if you got a guy who's got a medical issue like Tua does, is Tua off some boards? I'm sure he's off some. How many is he off? We just don't know. Will he go 3 like we originally thought? Who knows? Will he go 5 because nobody makes a trade up and then the Dolphins take him at 5? Don't know. If the Dolphins leave him on the board, does he go 6? I'd say yes, he does, to somebody, either to the Chargers or somebody else. I don't see the Chargers passing him up. Considering their quarterback situation, if he's available, they can talk all they want, but I don't think they pass up a quarterback of that magnitude if he's available at 6. I don't care what they say they're doing or not. I think if that player's on the board, you're going to see teams start to react to that after 5 picks are in. So if the Dolphins, because they're worried about Tua and they're worried about his being brittle and they're worried about all of his injury situations, if they turn around and take Herbert instead, then that thing's going to go a little haywire right there, because that's going to be where teams are going to try and trade up. That's going to be where teams are going to try and make their move, and that's where if he comes out of the 5 hole where everyone still figured if they didn't vacate the spot, that's where they're going to pick Tua. They pick Tua, the board then comes off basically like people thought. If they don't pick Tua there, then Tua's available past where people thought he was going to be, which starts to change people's plans, which means there's a lot of movement and a lot of craziness going on as people rush to make the move they want to make. So I think that is where you would be throwing the first thing to watch is what happens at 3. Do the Lions make a trade and allow somebody to come up to 3 to get Tua? If Tua doesn't go 3, then you start to say, okay, he's going to go 5 after the Giants probably take an offensive tackle at 4. If he is still on the board after 5, then you get the first wave of real scrambling going on, where people who think they can move up 5 or 6 slots and get a shot, or people who are now thinking they're in play that didn't expect to be in play, that couldn't get up to 3 but felt they could get up to 6 or 7. So we'll see. Do I think it is unreasonable if he's off somebody's board? No, I don't. You're talking about a player who has been extremely injury prone, who has suffered serious injuries, who has been extremely brittle. So I don't have a problem with that. I think if someone needs him to be healthy next year, if someone needs them to show progress next year, if someone's job is on the line there, you can understand them not taking that kind of player. It's much easier to justify the safe pick in this league. And that's always a big part of it. Taking the gamble, making the gamble move is always interesting, but it's not always the safest way to play it, especially if you've struggled and they're asking for some productivity right away. So we'll see how that starts to unfold.
Mike's on. He's ready to go. On the Fan. New York Sports Radio. Mike's on. Mike's on. He'll get you the sports any way that he can. It's Mike Francesa on the Fan. Sports Radio 66 and 101.9 FM. WFAN.
All right, we come to you tonight, as always, brought to you by Casamigos Tequila, brought to you by those who drink it on this Wednesday evening, the 22nd day of April. Draft tomorrow. We'll be on 6 to 7 tomorrow with a draft preview show before the coverage begins at 7. Same thing Friday, 6 to 7. Coverage begins at 7. We welcome in Albert Breer tonight, and we'll kick some stuff around the league. Albert, welcome. What's happening?
I'm good, Mike. What's going on?
All right, tell me what you're hearing. What's the latest as we get? You've had so much time to get into this one event. You got so much that everyone's, zeroing in on. Ratings will be off the charts high. I mean, you got a captive audience, to say the least. So I think the ratings will be the highest they've ever been. Not only for the draft, they will be incredibly. I think people will be amazed how high the ratings will be. They will be enormous. The ratings for this event, especially the first round. But what are you hearing? What's the biggest buzz you hear that you believe?
Well, I think the offensive tackle position is going to sort of paint a picture for the first round. And I think there are three reasons for it. One, it's a good year at the position. Two, there's an enormous need for offensive linemen across the league in general. And we've seen that how, some average to good linemen have gotten paid free agency the last few years. And then number three, because of the situation that our country's in and because teams can't do 30 visits and they can't do private workouts, I think there's going to be sort of a risk-averse first round. And so, I know a lot of teams look at it and say, the thing you can do to mitigate risk is to take big men. They're less of a projection. You can see more on tape. And so, I think we're going to see a fair amount of offensive tackles go in the first round. It could be as many as 8 of them. And, I think the first –
Eight offensive tackles in the first. What do you know what the record is in the first round for offensive tackles?
I'm not sure. What the record is,
I don't. But that sounds like a lot. 8 sounds like an amazing amount.
I'll tell. Yeah, I mean that's a quarter of the first round, and so I think you'll have 4 off the board in the first 10 or 11 picks, and that's Tristan Wirfs, Jedrick Wills, Mekhi Becton and Andrew Thomas, and then I think beyond that you're gonna have this second group, which is Austin Jackson, Josh Jones, Isaiah Wilson, and Ezra Cleveland. And, I think all 8 of them could wind up going in the first round.
Wow, that's amazing.
You could even get a 9th offensive lineman, too. The Michigan center, Cesar Ruiz, could go in the first round as well. And so, I think it's sort of a convergence of a bunch of different things. But, certainly I think in the top 10, a lot of what happens is going to be sort of guided by where the tackles go. And then, beyond just that, because, of the circumstances, I think you get the next group that gets pushed up a little bit too, where the second run on tackles, I think, could start as early as in the teens.
Tua has been one of the oddest players to come into the draft in decades. First of all, his career was very odd. It started odd. It ended odd. His numbers for his career are brilliant. His wins are brilliant. Everything's brilliant except the fact that he's been hurt 4 or 5 times. There's rumors about other injuries now. We know that. There's rumors that he's off multiple boards, okay? What no one knows what the truth is. We know that. And you're dealing
Yep.
with something where everybody's examination could yield something else. We know that, okay? One guy can
Right.
like the hip, one guy doesn't like the hip. One guy thinks, I'm not worried about these injuries. I'm worried about these injuries. Okay, there's a lot to get to there. And then he doesn't do well on the Wonderlic, which, again, just throws more confusion in there. On top of it, you hear Saban talk about how he's a once-in-a-million player, okay, and how special he is, and someone's going to make the same mistake that he made with Drew Brees, and all this stuff, okay? So all that thrown in the pot, where does he wind up being drafted?
If he gets past 6, I think it becomes very uncertain. I don't think the Dolphins take him at 5.
So nobody. First things first. Nobody trades up to 3 to the Lions for him. You don't think that happens?
I don't. As of right now, I don't think so.
Okay.
As
of
of right now, I know the Lions had trouble drumming up a market for that pick, and ultimately, I think that it's going to sound strange, Mike, but the tackles are hotter than the quarterbacks right now. And I think, when you look at the 2 quarterbacks, there's a lot of mystery over where each of them are going to go. And so I think what's fascinating is if either one of these guys make it past the Chargers at 6, I look out because I don't know.
So you think they could fall a lot? Okay. So now, do you?
You remember this, Mike? You remember this, Mike? If you go back and you look, this has happened before. Johnny Manziel, Brady Quinn, Aaron Rodgers. Those were guys who, when going in, everybody thought top 10, and those guys, once those guys got past a certain point, all of a sudden, now you, when you get into the teams, you start to run it, and this is traditionally always the way it's worked. Once you get into the teams, all of a sudden you start to hit all of these teams who don't need quarterbacks, and so, it's not necessarily a reflection.
See, I will be stunned if this happens for this reason. This kid first of all, he has a world of talent. Secondly, he has got an incredible resume. His resume is mind-boggling. The guy's got 70 touchdowns and 6 interceptions, and he's played in championship games, and he's won championships, and he played at Alabama, and the guy raves about him. And then on top of it, you got 5 major injuries. So you have a crazy situation. So you think no to 3? Does that mean the Lions take the corner or they take a tackle?
I think it's either Jeff Okudah, the corner from Ohio State, or Derek Brown.
Oh, okay. So you think they go defense, and then the Giants, you think take an offensive tackle?
I think the Giants take an offensive tackle.
And who do you think they take?
My guess right now would be my guess would be the tackle from Iowa.
Okay, and I think that's the best one myself. That's who I like. Okay, and then the Dolphins don't take a quarterback at 5, or do?
I think there's a possibility they don't. Now, what you're hearing out there is that they could take a tackle and come back later and wind up with Jordan Love. And that sounds crazy. And maybe things change if one of the other quarterbacks starts to slip a little bit. But one of the things that you did hear was that they could come back and they could draft a tackle first and come back and get their quarterback with their second pick. So, the Dolphins are in an interesting situation because they've got so much capital. They got 3 1s. They have 2 2s. They're in position to do whatever they want, and so I think the only thing they've been unable to do is entice the Bengals to move off of 1. Other than that, they've got an ability to move around the board as they please. And so, I think you certainly could see them address their tackle need, which was opened up by the trade of Laramie Tunsil last August. They could take care of their tackle need first, and then come back and get their quarterback.
And if the Dolphins, and we're talking about Albert Breer, of course, if the Dolphins don't take a quarterback at 5 and take a tackle, do the Chargers, even in their situation, not take the first or the second quarterback off the board after obviously Burrow? But do they not take a quarterback there, or do they pass on a quarterback?
I mean, they've been cagey about it. I do know this. I do know that the medical with Tua has been a point of discussion recently there, and we can't be naive.
You think teams are down on Tua now? Do you get the idea teams are down on him?
I think it's the injury risk. It's just, it's not. Look, his tape is really good. You mentioned.
Do you believe the wrist injury is real or no? Do you think he actually did fracture his wrist or don't?
I don't think it's that one thing though. I don't think it's any one injury. And look, the 2 tightrope surgeries. those are newer surgeries, right?
Right.
So like we don't know what that's going to look like in 5
Right.
years. The hip's the hip, and we know how serious hip.
Hey, I
injuries are.
know one guy doesn't like that hip at all. I mean, I know an
Yeah.
orthopedic guy
So-
who thinks that hip is a big problem. He said he thought it was a 25% bad hip.
So here's the thing, right? So like just let's assume let's assume that Tua is 100% right now, even if he is, right? The problem is the history of injuries goes back to high school. He's a smaller player, and a lot of people are going to look at that and say to themselves, I can't stake my future on a player who hasn't been able to stay healthy. And again, you look back at the history at that position, guys who've gone in the first round, who have injury history, all get hurt again. Like every single one.
Well, why is Herbert falling too then? Why are they both falling?
I mean, Herbert.
Or was he never that high to begin with?
Herbert's the player that it depends on who you talk to. There are people who think he's the best one in the draft. Like I'm telling you, there are people who think he's better than Burrow. The question is how much of his issues do you think are workable? And the issues I've heard on him, he doesn't anticipate as well as Burrow or Tua. He isn't as accurate as Burrow or Tua.
Well, nobody's as accurate as either one of those two, especially,
Right.
I mean, Burrow and Tua are both incredibly accurate.
With Herbert, and this is a little bit like, this is not unlike Josh Allen, a couple of years ago, where there are issues there when you watch the tape, and there are issues there that don't come up with Tua or Burrow. And so, really, if you're drafting Justin Herbert, you're betting on two things. You're betting A, on his physical ability, which is off the chart,
and he's a big man.
And then B, you're betting on your ability to fix what's wrong. And there are some people who look at things like anticipation and accuracy and say you can't fix that. There are other people who will say yes, you can fix that if you work on him mechanically. And so that's again, like Justin Herbert is like a lot of quarterbacks we've seen come into the league that have this sort of physical ability where it's just so much of it comes down to how much of it you think you can actually fix.
Do you believe any of these rumors about Gruden and a quarterback? Do you believe any of these rumors about the Patriots and a quarterback?
So the Patriots have so many holes, and it sounds weird because they've been so successful, but they've gotten old. The roster, the cap situation is a problem. They're going to be carrying a lot of dead money on their cap this year. My understanding is this year is they're looking at it as sort of a clear the decks year where they can kind of go into 2021 with a clean slate.
And they can afford one, that's for sure.
Right, and if they can bite the bullet this year.
Right.
I do think they like Jarrett Stidham, and they wouldn't be averse to going to Stidham in 2020 and seeing how that goes. If Tua were to start falling, is it the craziest thing in the world that they could take a stab at him? No, because as much as I would tell you that it goes against a lot of the things the Patriots do. He's a smaller player. He's, obviously had the injury history, all that different stuff. I know Bill has the power to take risks, which is a big part of this, right? Because there are some places
listen, he can do whatever he wants, yeah.
Right. I mean, there are some places, this, Mike, there are some places where the coach can't overrule the doctor.
Absolutely. Some places where the coach is in a tough spot. There he can do whatever he wants, obviously.
Right. And so there's that. And there's also what you mentioned, which is how highly Nick Saban thinks of this kid.
Right.
And, for most guys, here's the thing. Like, most guys, if you're a Chris Greer in Miami and you draft Tua 5th overall, you are literally tying your livelihood to
Absolutely.
him, right?
You'll get fired if he gets hurt.
Right. Okay. If you're Bill, you can take that risk, and you're not.
Of course.
You're not as worried. You're not as worried about that. And so if it doesn't work, it doesn't work.
What about Gruden in this thing? I've heard rumors about Gruden being in. You always hear rumors about Gruden anyway, so you never know what he's going to do.
And Gruden's always sort of got wandering eyes when it comes to quarterbacks, right?
Yeah.
So that's sort of, I think, again, they sort of look at Derek Carr as, he's a nice placeholder. They feel like they can win with him. They'll be looking for an upgrade until they find one, I think is sort of the way you want to look at that. And, Tua has some of the things that Derek Carr doesn't. He moves better. He extends plays better. He's tougher. Gets hurt more, of course, but there's a lot of things with Tua where you can look at him and say, you can take hard coaching. There's a lot of things you can look at with Tua, and you could say, he's got some of the stuff that Gruden feels like is missing in Carr, and so maybe he would take a swing on him. I don't know what Gruden would do if Tua fell into his lap at 12 or 19. But I do know that, other teams sort of have their radar up for Vegas being a potential landing spot if Tua slips a little bit.
What about Jacksonville in this whole thing?
I've heard Jacksonville wants to trade back out of 9 and maybe trade out to 2021. And they're another team that's got a cap problem.
And could be trading a couple of their big stars anyway.
Right.
They got unhappy players there.
Right, and this is sort of, I think, and look, like I think ownership's driving part of this, like where this is sort of like they're clear the decks here too, and so. I think that they'd be of a mind to just sort of start building capital, for next year.
Right, and you have a kid next year at the top of the draft who is a central casting,
talent,
essential casting, 6'6", guy with a Hall of Fame grade. He's going to have a Hall of Fame grade. He's going to have an Elway. He's going to have an Elway Luck Aikman grade.
Right, and so I think that the Jacksonville's a team where you look at it and say, is that the Trevor Lawrence team? Is that the team that's going to start to set things up where they got a cap issue this year, they got to ride some dead money out, but once they get out of it, maybe they're drafting really high next year and they've got a boatload of picks to put people around them. Definitely I would say there's a perception out there across the league with different teams that Jacksonville is sort of the Trevor Lawrence team going into this draft.
We're talking with Albert Breer, of course. Draft tomorrow night. We'll have a draft preview show at 6, and then the draft coverage on the Fan at 7. Same thing Friday night, both nights 6 to 7. Scott Pioli will join me both nights, and we'll have some reporters bouncing in and out too, telling us what's going on. Giants, Gundy ahead, offensive tackle at 4, right? I think we all think that. You think Wirfs first. Is that what you think?
That'd be my guess, and I'll tell you why. I think Becton's too risky. His tape's inconsistent. He's got a weight issue. He fits to some degree what Gettleman's looked for in the past, and that Gettleman likes big players. But I think he's just too risky, especially when you're talking about, setting up a coach with his first draft pick. So I don't think it'll be Becton. I think Wills and Wirfs will both be in play.
Any chance he takes one of the defenders?
I don't think so. I think it's probably a tackle. And I'll tell you this: the reason I'm giving them Wirfs is just how the Patriot tree, how they use their coaching connections, right?
Yep.
And Alabama and Iowa are two programs that are tied closely to that Bill Belichick program.
No question.
Well, what I've heard is that the Iowa coaches are higher on Wirfs than the Alabama coaches are on Wills.
Oh, no. Listen, they love Iowa loves the kid. They do. And everyone loves Forensic players anyway, so we know that.
And he's a good kid, and he's coming from a good program. And God, they've got a long history of producing very good NFL offensive line.
Excellent.
Yeah,
tight ends and tackles are big, and offensive linemen for them. Tight ends and offensive linemen are very big for them. Who's the sleeper player? Who's the player who we may not have heard a lot about, who jumps up the board and goes early? Anybody?
There are a couple. I mean, I think so. One guy who, I don't feel like a lot of people publicly have talked about that teams seem to love is the safety from Alabama, Xavier McKinney. He's versatile. He's a great kid. He's smart. He's sort of a 21st century player. Now, he didn't run great in Indy, right? He ran like a 4.6, but the tape is so good this year, and he's able to do so many different things for you. I've heard some Earl Thomas comparisons about him. He is one of these guys that, and I'd say there's 3 in this year's class. Okay, I'd say number 1, Derek Brown is seen as a really clean prospect, a guy who, again, I think he could wind up with Matt Rule in Carolina. Your first pick, just hit it right in the middle of the fairway. Xavier McKinney's another, and then the third would be Kenneth Murray, the linebacker from Oklahoma. Those 3 are really good kids, smart, productive, guys who are going to be leaders in your program, probably captains for you within a few years. And so, I could see.
Any chance Love goes really high, that he goes, Love just shocks people and goes before a couple of these other quarterbacks?
I'd be surprised if Love went much higher than you've seen him. Now, again, he's a sort of prospect. There's a little Mahomes to him, and poor man Mahomes, but there's a little Mahomes in him in that he's sort of an acquired taste and certain people like him more than other people. And so, I think the teams that do like him have tried to keep that under wraps a little bit. And in 2017, that led to Mahomes going higher than anybody thought he would because the Chiefs got wind that the Saints liked him.
All right,
So,
the Jets, I only have 1 minute left, so let me hurry. Number one, the Jets, do they take the fourth tackle or do they take the first receiver?
I don't think they'll take a receiver, Mike. I think they take a tackle in all likelihood. I would keep an eye on C.J. Henderson, the corner from Florida. If it's not maybe it's a receiver, but
who's the first receiver off the board in your mind? They're all close. Who do you like? Which one's the first one off?
Jerry Jeudy, I would think, is going to be the first one off the board to the Raiders. I think Henry Ruggs and CeeDee Lamb will be right there, though.
So all three are close.
I think all three go between 11 and 20. Not impossible the Jets wind up with one of them. I think that Joe Douglas would rather address, I think, what he considers more of a value position. So offensive tackle, corner, I think, could be in play.
And one last thing, and listen, we want to hold you this, but I just want to get, because this is really the theme of the day. If you gave me today, and I know how changeable this is, what number does Tua go in a draft?
Gun to my head, I'll say 6 to the Chargers.
6 to the Chargers. Thanks for your help. Enjoy your day tomorrow, Albert. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Mike.
Albert Breer, we didn't break, so we will just say goodbye now, and then you can get on to Susan at 6:30, and then what's coming up at 7. They have the charity event coming up from Jersey. We'll see you tomorrow at 6 with our NFL preview show, draft show. We'll start at 6. Scott Pioli and some reporters will be with us at the time. We will do that 6 to 7. Then they have a fan will have a draft coverage after 7. Both nights will be on 6 to 7 tomorrow night and Friday night. With the draft stuff, we'll be on radio.com at 5. We'll be on the fan tomorrow at 6 for an hour with draft coverage both days. Preview tomorrow and Friday. Casamigos Tequila, as always, brings you the program brought to you by those who drink it on this Wednesday evening. Stay safe. We will see you tomorrow.